Welcome to The Real Heal. I am your host, Dr. Renee Wallenstein, also known as the Libidoologist. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Allison, I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
And, again, 2023 is really my year of having experts on that are talking about things that go deeper than the usual things that we used to know that we talk about on a holistic health podcast, like nutrition and sleep and exercise and brain health. And that's all great, but we're going to go deeper this year. And our interview is actually one of those interviews. So welcome.
Perfect. I'm super excited to share what I know to be true, and hopefully it resonates with the listeners.
Mm-hmm. So why don't we talk about who you are, how you got doing what you're doing, because the listeners may not even know what you specialize in. So
yeah,
let's
absolutely.
Start with that.
My name is Allison Sutter. I live outside of Chicago, and I started as a teacher. That's where my career started, as an elementary teacher. And then when I had my kids, I stayed home, but I wanted something more. So I did investigate holistic health. I got a holistic lifestyle coaching certification, level 1. And from there, I dialed into what do I really resonate with? And that was that spirituality, what we call spirituality, spirit, soul, essence. And that's kind of what led me to where I am today. Over the years, I've done a lot of writing. After I worked with somebody who was very well known in the personal development industry, which was actually quite a dissatisfying kind of traumatic experience. And so from that led me to, from my own personal standpoint, right? Promises made, promises not kept, that kind of thing. So from there, but everything is a blessing, right? So from there, I jumped off and I said, well, what do I have left? Because I lost $20,000 in 3 years of my life. And I'm like, what do I have left? I have my authenticity. I have who I am, my energetic stamp. I have my training as a teacher. And I have the ability to hone my intuition. And I want to learn, because fear was a component in so many things that I did in life. And I said, I want to learn how to transform that fear. So those are sort of the tripod in which I stand at this point. And I started writing tons of classes to get feedback from students. So what I do that's different, which is kind of cool, is I took what I knew about education in general. What is good about education? What is beyond memorization? What is beyond forced learning, which is what standardized education is. There's a standard and you have to fit into the standard. And there's a lot of that in health as well. But, I said, I want to take whatever I can from that structure that's good. And what's good about it is you have sort of like bumpers on a bowling alley. You can have an outline of something. And then you sort of like your skeletal system is an outline, and you fill it in with your organs and your tissue and what you put in and all that stuff. So, and then upon this structure, I started to build these through 3 components, which are intuition, transforming fear, and really helping people celebrate how authentic and diverse and different they are. It's so, so essential that you recognize your essence of who you really are. So I built classes, and I have about 5,000 students who went through the classes. So they gave me great feedback. And what I found was, because my intention was to set up the courses so that at the end there's independence, because usually when you do an online course, it's dependency based or upsell based or teacher instructional based. I said, I want independence. I don't want them dependent on me when they're done with a course. And that seems to have been what the students garnered. And then from there, I went into coaching, and I coached women who are, your demographic women who are between those particular ages, who are struggling with, issues that are generally happening between your 30s and 50s, 60s, family life balance, and really I found that in the 50s, intuition becomes essential. Essential, because there's so many changes happening in the family and the body and life and career. There's a lot of disorganization internally, and intuition can help you solve all of the issues that you're dealing with.
I love that. Yeah, I'm 50. So, and I started honing my intuition in about 9 years ago. It's really interesting, and we're going to talk about exactly what intuition is, but I always said, like I was trained conventionally in medicine, so OBGYN. And so I was trained right from like very young age, especially school, right? Very black and white. Like there's this right way, wrong way, and there's no in between. And that continued through my entire career to the point where I was very robotic. Like this is very much, we were programmed as docs, like,
Yes.
symptoms, diagnosis, medication. We don't think outside of that. Like there's what they call a differential diagnosis, which is what else it could be, but that's as far as you think.
Mm-hmm.
There's no creative thinking there. There's no like going like, I really feel like this is going on. No, it is or it isn't based on the labs, so like that intuition part of me was very rusty because I didn't even really know what it was. Like, I think it would come up and be like, oh, what is that? Go down, get away until my career change actually. And that was the first night. I remember it very clearly where I decided to talk to this woman who was in functional medicine, which is what I'm in now. And she diagnosed me correctly after a misdiagnosis in the conventional world over a year and a half. And then she offered me a job. And I'm Googling like functional medicine. I'm like, I don't even know what this stuff is, right? Literally, the conversation was maybe a half hour at most. My husband had gone into the shower. He came out of the shower and I said, oh, I have this adrenal dysfunction going on. I don't even know what that is, but I fit all the criteria and I have a plan to feel better. And, oh, by the way, I'm leaving the hospital. I'm leaving conventional OB/GYN and I'm going to do a functional medicine fellowship. And he's like, how long was I in the shower for? And that was the first night I was like, boom, this is what I'm doing.
Yes.
And I didn't even let my mind get into it to talk me out of it and scare me. Like I was just like, yep, this is what I'm doing. I'm joining her in practice. This was January, in September, and it all happened. But like that for me was a very like, oh my gosh, this feeling's coming up that I can't deny, I can't suppress. I need to go with it. And I just ran with it. And from then on, like I've not stopped listening to my intuition, but up until then, it was very blunted, even though I knew it was in there. I really didn't know until that night. It's like this like light shine from the skies of like, this is what you have to do. This is your next mission in life, which is kind of what I was looking for a year, almost 2 years, but not until I really talked to the right person, got in the right place. And I was like, yep, this is it. So with that being said, like what is intuition? Because that's a fancy word that a lot of people use. And they're like, I don't even know what that is.
Well, so depending on the person, you're going to have a different definition, and you might have a different definition at every phase of your life because definitions are expand and evolve and change depending on where you are in life. So at one point, I had a pretty traditional definition, like a gut feeling, or I got the goosies, or I just know. I mean, there's kind of a couple catchphrases that people use, and they don't go beyond that. Well, over the past couple of years, I've really been delving in, and I've gone very much in the direction of woo-woo. So just preface that I am very what you call woo-woo for many different reasons, which I don't know if we'll cover all of those, but I've had many different, and I talk about this in my book, The Halfways, because I talk about connecting the dots backwards, which I encourage people to do, because in connecting the dots backwards, you're going to see how intuition has been flowing for you since day one, since you were born. But so just stay with me on this definition. So now my definition is, it's actually a third reality, like a portal or a port or an interface. So just put that out there. So this computer is a port, an interface, a portal. It's translating a vibration for the listeners, both on audio. I don't know if you do video, but it's audio or video. So it's a third reality, right? It's a port, it's an interface. So for me, intuition is a modality. It's sort of like this thing that exists that will translate vibration. And vibration is the essence of who we are. And that vibration could be coming from, depending on what your belief system is, God, higher self, your spirit teams, your soul guides, whatever your belief system incorporates, they're vibrational, they're non-physical. So there has to be a component of translation. And that's what I use is this like, intuition is a vibrational translator. So how does it translate? Well, that depends on your definition. And your relationship with it. So if your relationship with it is, oh, it's just a gut feeling, and it only happens once a year, well, you're only going to get it once a year as a gut feeling, because that's your definition. You're defining it as such, and therefore it's your belief and how you interpret it. So my definition being that is also includes, it happens in a multitude of ways. It might happen as a thought. It might be an inclination. It might be a super exciting idea. It might be like, so there's it might be something within my body, because there are these things called the clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, like all these different clairs. They're really just translations of what I perceive to be intuition. So that being said, your intuition, as the listeners are listening to this going, oh, that sounds crazy. Well, first of all, listen to it again and absorb what you can.
Yeah.
Take what you want, pitch the rest.
Yeah.
But most importantly, know that there's nothing wrong or faulty with your intuition. However, you can disregard it. You can define it in a way that doesn't allow the 100% of it to be received and perceived by you. You can do that, but you have free will, you have control. But be mindful of things that you say in conversation or how you relate to the idea. Like, for example, if somebody is talking about intuition, or you're listening to this podcast and you share it with a friend and you go, I'm not intuitive, I've never been intuitive. Like, be mindful of what you're saying in natural conversation, because you've just given yourself your definition, which doesn't involve or incorporate you. So you're not actually going to perceive it. It's not that you don't receive it, you do. You're not going to perceive it. Right? So
they're constantly coming through. Like, like you were explaining, the gut feeling. I think people are like, oh, I get this hit, like this gut, this like, but there's constantly channeling through us from the feelings in our bodies, like you said, that gut feeling, or like things that you might hear, or an idea that pops in our head, or what have you.
So I'll give you an example too. My dad was actually a urologist and a surgeon. So I'm very familiar with the conventional kind of like, if you can't see it, it isn't real. Like, that was his idea of reality. And so when I started getting into this, he was so excited about the fact that one day he listened to a podcast or something I did. He's passed on now, but he listened to it, and I defined him as intuitive, as a surgeon. Like, I just know to put my hand, I just know to look here. I know to cut, like, yes, there's training, but there's also a level of knowledge that you as a physician might have gone, you know what, I just need to check under the armpit. Just like, I just need to go back and look, right? Like, that thought passes through, and you think it's my training, but it's actually inner guidance going, look again, test again. So, you can be scientifically intuitive, medically intuitive, any kind of topical area. You were probably getting intuitive hits that you dismiss as training or knowledge or something else. And, you're just sort of pretending you're trying to define it into a very small, reconstricted space, when it's actually very wide. Authors, we give free rein and legitimize the relationship with intuition in authors, fiction authors, when they write these magnificent tales of other worlds and build these, world building and landscapes and all of these different things. We go, oh yes, of course, those creative ones. Right. So we legitimize it in certain topic areas, but not in others. It's legit in all.
I love that. We were just in my last episode. So the listeners, it'll be the last week's episode talking about creatives and, also riffing on intuition as well. So they'll get a double dose, but coming from a different expert with a different framework and a different perspective, which is really important, because I think that's important to sort of integrate all of this and have them come up with their own definition of intuition and what it means to them. But I think the biggest point here is, like, it's always coming through in different ways. It's just whether you listen or you don't listen, right? Do you ignore it?
Yeah, you have free will. You can, it isn't right or wrong. If you don't listen, oh well. If you do, great. Like, there isn't any judgment or anything you have to be doing in this lifetime. You can do whatever pleases you.
It's funny when I have something come up and I was like, okay, so if I don't listen to that, whatever it is, I will never know if that was the right, because you don't know. Like, if I actually, one time I went against my intuition, not parking in a certain area. Part of me was like, I always parked in the same spot every day. This was like 8 years ago. And this is when I just started listening to those little like things that would come to me out of nowhere. And I was like, something's telling me to move my car. But then I was like, I always park there. Why do I have to move the car today? And I had this dilemma in the parking lot. I was at my office. I walked into my office. I saw a patient. I walked out. The UPS guy comes in and says, I don't know whose Subaru's out there, but it just got hit. I was like, oh, there we go. But rarely do you see the consequences, or rarely do you stop when you're getting that like thought and think, and I mindfully went against that thought and said, this is ridiculous. I don't know what I'm thinking. Like, I always park there. Why today did this thought come into my head to move the car?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, that's why. And I'm telling you, that is the last time I struggled with such a decision, when I had this like, yes, do that. And I actively said no.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Well,
the last time I ever did that 8 years ago.
well, there's also this concept of negative and how we want to always avoid the negative. But there's, first of all, there's positive, negative, and neutral in everything. And so when you look at something like that, you probably said to yourself, I would like experiential learning and understanding how to and what degree to which I trust my intuition. So you gave yourself an experience,
Yeah.
right? And so there's positive and the negative. So if somebody says, I don't listen to my intuition, great. Take those situations or circumstances and use them to build your own trust. Here's a time where I know I did not listen and I know it was intuition. Great. Perfect.
Yeah. And it was the last time, because that was enough of a test for me. And you're right. You know, it was probably, this is probably a year, not maybe a year after that initial like time I listened. And I think I just mindlessly had been listening to it all along without like just literally stopping in the middle of a parking lot to like question it. You know, every other time it wasn't as mindful. And this was the one time I think I like you said, it was like a little test, like, and not to be negative, if I failed that day, like it showed me to trust myself. Like I should have literally just gotten back in that car and moved it. But then again, I wouldn't have been testing my intuition. So,
well, there's the benefit too of knowing the sensation, like becoming more familiarized with the own sensorial types of experiences as it comes through in that moment. And so you can look back on that and say, oh, this is how it felt. So next time I'm going to be more aware and tuned into that feeling in another topic area. And I'm going to go, no, oh yeah, there's that feeling, because that's the sensorial type of kinesthetic awareness that comes with, because it's hormonal, right? I mean, being a doctor, you know that everything is hormonal. It's a alchemical happening in the body, but it comes through thought processes and other things as well. So
yeah. So for the listeners like that, really now they have a better understanding of intuition. Like, how do we connect with it to go deeper with our intuition? Like, how do we even begin to connect with it and then take it to the next level?
well, the first thing I would say is it really your excitement, or are you doing it because it's prescribed? Like, check with yourself, because if you're doing something that's prescriptive in nature, there's a likelihood that it's fear-based and driven out of a sense of obligation. So just check yourself in anything that you're doing. Is this obligatory, or is this really something I'm truly excited and interested in? If you're truly excited and interested, the thing that I would say is there's a formula that I give that is applicable to anyone, any place. And it is the thing that will get you to that end result of being more in tune. And it goes like this, and I can go back and go over it, but it's, and I can tell you that you learned this in kindergarten. I can tell you why. It goes, follow your highest level of excitement from the choices that you have before you in any given moment. Take that excitement as far as you can take it. So you can't take it any farther. Don't demand. This is the thing. This is where people mess up all the time. Don't demand that initial inclination or excitement becomes something specific, and stay in a positive mindset no matter what. So here's an example. You go to kindergarten, right? You go in a kindergarten classroom. You put those kids in a room. They're going to go to the thing that excites them the most, that they're curious about the most. They're not going to go in that room and go, where are the balls, when there aren't any balls, for the most part in preschool. They're just going to go and find what's there based on what they're excited about. They're going to use that toy or tool or whatever, as long as they want to whatever capacity they can. They literally do this too. They set it down, they walk away. They don't go, pencil, you should have been a doll. And now I realize that I am no good because you're not a doll. If you're pencil, you're not a doll, then it must be me. I must be unworthy. This is what people do in real life. And so they're gonna play with that toy. They're gonna use it to the capacity. They're gonna let it go. They're not gonna demand it become something else. They're gonna move to the next thing, and they're gonna stay in a positive mindset. You go into a preschool classroom. This is what we do naturally until we're trained out of it. in school. Standardized learning says there's a standard, there's a protocol. You need to fit into it. And if you don't, that's where intuition becomes a little bit, like you said, dulled, or we decide that it's not important, or there can't be some logical or legitimate capacity in which I could use this. And I can tell you through my own kids, it's absolutely logical, legitimate, and helpful in career, in family, in health issues, all sorts of things. So that's the formula. So the listener goes, okay, what was that? So go back and listen to the recording again, and understand that your excitement, which is a hormonal translation of intuitive guidance, which is higher guidance, comes through the body, and you go, oh, that's really exciting. That sounds interesting. I'm really curious about that. That is the linguistic communication and of your non-physical essence coming through intuition and guiding you. You can trust it. Don't let anybody dumb it down and say, oh, you're just excited about it. That's stupid. Go do this instead because I think this is more important for your life. No, I mean, I think we're going to evolve out of that. Parents are going to stop telling their kids eventually, I think I know what's best for you, and realize that they have an inner guidance and they are intuitively guided. And they will, maybe they don't know what you think they should do, but they're going to do what is, their inner guidance is saying, this is really exciting. I got one kid who's going to become a teacher. I got one kid who's going into marine biology. I got another kid who's going into comp sci. But I started when they were little, and I said, what makes you excited? What gets you going? That's where motivation comes from. Motivation doesn't come from carrot on the stick. Eventually you're going to get this. I think you should have this. True motivation comes from that motivational mechanism that you have when you step in that kindergarten classroom and you're given free rein to go and do what you want to do.
I love that. That's so good. I have two teenagers. They're going to be 16. And I ask them that even now. It's like, and they don't really know, which is interesting because I think they're in such the standard of living, or learning. It's like, they're reciting math formulas this morning on the way to school because they had a test. And honestly, they're so busy learning that I don't know if they have a chance to really sit back and figure out what they love, I think they're really clear on what they don't like. But to really fine tune what they love, especially since they're getting into the age where they're going to be asked, where do you want to go to college for? Do you want to go to college? And what do you want to do with the rest of your life? That's a big question for an 18-year-old, but it's really hard in these school systems now where they're just they're learning so much. It's in my opinion, it's such a short period of time and chronic constant tests every day. And it's they have no time to think outside of a math formula or, a periodic table in chemistry. So
right. It's never too late to ask your kids different questions. What are you curious about? Tell me what really lights you up. Whether they say, I don't know or not, they do know. They may be just indoctrinated to say they don't know because what they know isn't approved, isn't given the stamp of approval by friends, family, the world at large. I'm really interested in, taking toasters apart. And someone goes, that's stupid. So, they do know, but it takes a little bit of giving the space, the non-judgmental space to allow that intuitive guidance to come through. And because, I've been on both sides of this. I was a standardized education teacher. There are certain prescriptive kinds of things that you're supposed to do. It's very outlined. And knowing that, I started asking my kids really young. I said, we're going to play this game. It's called standardized education. You're going to have to memorize stuff that's going to be of no consequence to you whatsoever. But we're going to play the game. And then while we're playing that game, we're going to play another game. It's what lights you up? What gets you going? What would you do for hours and forget that you were hungry or had to go to the bathroom and you couldn't hear people calling your name? That's what you go for when you're done playing the game.
I love that. Yeah. They're getting into that year next year of exploring more things. They actually can take things that they might be interested in, start playing and figuring it out to the best of their ability. Again, who knows, but I'll just keep asking the questions and we'll just keep exploring and do our best, Um, so, speaking of intuition, like how are there benefits? Are there practical benefits to really tapping into our intuition and listening to it?
100,000%. Again, so let's look at it from a spiritual perspective, and then we'll look at it from the practical perspective.
Okay.
From the spiritual perspective, let's say it's your higher self, which is an aspect of you. When you tap out, and everyone taps out, like everyone goes back to non-physical. No one lives forever. You go back and you rejoin with that non-physical essence, whatever you call it, spirit, soul, guidance, God, whatever you call it. At this point, let's just look at it like there's a piece of you that's dedicated to your guidance. Got a bird's eye view, right? So it's going to look through the lens of no time and no space, and get ideas about what you could do and give you hints through this thing called excitement. So you're going to use that excitement for practical purpose. And when I say excitement, it depends on the degree or spectrum of where you start. I'll tell you, so a personal story is I'm 53 and I'm going through menopause. And I used it to decide what was the better choice for me, because menopause hit me like a train. Like I was like, I called my OB and I'm like, I cannot do this. So we worked up a plan. So you're going to get information on different plans, right?
Yep.
Take this or take that or do this. You're given 3 choices. Let's just say you have 3 choices. How do you know what the best choice is for you? Your OB is going to give you an opinion, but how do you know? Or your neighbor, like I was at Mahjong. We play Mahjong every Tuesday, and I got a bunch of different voices going, no, do this, and no, do this, and no, do this. And that can be very confusing when you don't know how to tap into your intuition and decide what is my next best step here. But I know. So I was listening and nodding and saying, thank you for your advice. I knew exactly what I was going to do perfectly. And I felt a lot better. So it's a very practical health purpose, right? In that example. In terms of a business, what is my next step in my business? If you have small business owners or large business owners or, leaders or employee, whatever your position is in the company, do I have this important conversation now, or do I wait a day? Like you can tune in and understand, am I going to have this decision out of fear, or do I wait a day and let synchronicity bring this person to me naturally, so we can have a natural, unforced conversation about this very important topic to me? Practical, very practical. Let's take it from the standpoint of a teenager. Where do I go to school? What college is the right college for me? People are going to tell you, I'm an alum here. It's the best college ever. Or your parents are going to tell you, oh, you know what? This has the best medical school, or this has the best whatever school. I think you should really go here. Very confusing. A lot of information. How do you know what the best step is for you? That's a big life decision. You got to know how to tune in. And you got to be able to parse it out. What is most important to me? Location, topics of study, size of the school. Like you can get a barometer. You can get a sense of what is most important to me. You got to silence all those other voices who think something else is better for you. You just got to begin to put the headphones on and tune in. And in my book, I talk about, like, there's almost like a barometer. I give an illustration, and you can tell whether it's an expanding feeling or a contracting feeling. Contracting is negative, expanding is positive. How does this feel to me? Why does it feel this way? Is it because mom thinks this, or is it because this is really, really want? How does it feel? Can I trust that feeling? Yes. Why can I trust that feeling? Because it's my higher self that has a bird's eye perspective beyond time and space, knows exactly what I want, knows exactly what I'm resistant to, knows exactly what I need. It's my soul-driven linguistic communication between my non-physical essence. I can trust it. And then you go out and you test it. Now, here's the thing. If you follow your intuition, it does not mean you are without challenges. You are going to have challenges. You are going to have hiccups. You are going to have things that you look at and go, oh my God, that went totally wrong. It is not the fault of your intuition, because being a human being, challenge is how we learn, right? It's not what happens to you, how you look at it. So begin to change your POV. I talk a lot about POV, point of view, in my Pathways book, because you got to get psychic flexibility. You've got to learn to shift your POV and not have a sense of victimization. this happened to me. No, this happens through me.
Mm-hmm.
It's through. It's not the end of the world. It's supposed to happen like this because it happened like this. How am I going to shift?
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. Speaking of your book, let's talk about your book a little bit, because, listeners might be like, okay, so how do I do this? Like, I need a little more guidance. She said a lot. I'm going to listen to this recording again, but I want to be able to read it. And your book's called The Halfways, a guidebook for strengthening intuitive guidance. Can you just give us sort of
Yes.
overview of the book?
Yep. So I deemed it the halfways because I want this new terminology to become something more familiar with. We are halfway non-physical, halfway physical, every single last one of us. When I was 20, my mom was 53. She died of cancer. I was 20, mind you. Like, I had no interest in self-help, personal stuff, nothing. She died, and instantly I had a telepathic communication with her. Well, I knew when you die, you don't take the negative with you. All the jealousy, all the hatred, all the rage, it's gone. Like, you go back to unconditional love, right? So you are half that unconditional love right now. And you are half the physical perspective, which takes on this perspective of, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I can't. This limitation comes through the physical perspective. So you got half of these things right now. So the book is meant to entrain you into the concept of you can trust yourself. You do have this guidance. And I use tons of examples. When I say I write simply, I take very high level concepts, but I write them in simplistic ways because my other goal as an instructor is to take these esoteric concepts and make them usable. Yeah. Like, I want them to make a difference, an actual difference in your life. So I bring these, if somebody talks in terms that are hard to understand, well, that's useless. What good is that? So I try to simplify it. And the other thing I do when I work with someone personally is I use their experience, because my experience doesn't mean anything. It's your experience that matters. That's the lens you're looking through. So, but the book has, clearly it's my experiences. But I take a couple of different ways of looking at this. We have to look at your belief systems. We look at what intuition is. We look at, I'll have to look at the chapters. I got it right here. Look at all of the stuff I wrote about. I write about connecting the dots backwards. So I give examples of connecting the dots back to 3 years old, when I was 3 years old, when I was in middle school. A lot of things happened. Like, in hindsight, I realized that I was having sort of prophetic type visions of where I was going to meet my husband, potentially. Like, free will, right? You may or may not, but it's where I eventually met my husband in college and on a boat from Italy to Greece. What else? Let's see. So the whole book is orchestrated around what people have told me in their language and their words, what their problem was with intuition. Like, I polled people, a couple hundred people, used their language, and then answered those questions. Right? So it's common speak, it's person speak, it's people's actual statements. And then the whole book is dedicated to, like, the difference between problem oriented and solution oriented. The binocular, I call it binocular perspective, the halfway is binocular, because if you've got binoculars and you separate the barrels, it looks like there's two separate realities out in front of you. There's two worlds, but you bring those barrels together and the two realities blend into one. That's what I want to encourage you to do. You are spiritual, you are a spirit, you are a non-physical essence having a physical perspective. Let's blend these two. Let's bring them together and make them practical for you. Awareness, discernment, relax and receive, and then, imagination is real. You can trust yourself. You can trust yourself. Through experiential learning, you can learn to trust yourself. It's never too late, whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, teenage, it doesn't matter. You can learn to trust yourself, and you will prove to yourself. The fact that you're listening to this episode is evidence, right? It's the evidential learning that you are interested. If you've listened this far, you're probably seriously interested in trusting yourself intuitively.
I have to say, it's fun. It's fun. Like, the more you do it, the better you get. And I'm not perfect. Like, but I feel like the more you trust yourself and say yes to those feelings, those thoughts and ideas and all the things, like, it's kind of scary. It is, not gonna lie. You don't always succeed either. Like, but I always learn a lesson. And I know what I don't want to do again to next time around to try something different. And so like, I think it's fun. That's all I can say. It's fun. It's fun to really slow down enough to connect and to listen and to then test, like
Yeah.
with, be mindful of testing and say like, okay, like we're going to give this a whirl. And sometimes worst case scenario, it doesn't work. It's no big deal. Sometimes it's a bigger deal.
So let's say someone listens to this and they're like, yes, I'm I'm down with this. I'm going to do this thing called trust myself, trust my intuition. Usually the next question that pops up in the mind is, how am I going to do, like how? We're so used to goal setting and planning and having the way laid out. I would like to encourage listeners to put that aside a little bit, like ease up on that a little bit, because here's the deal. Your intuitive guidance knows the how. It knows the how, and it's going to lead you synchronistically. And synchronicity is every single moment of every day, and there's negative and positive, but it's going to lead you down the path to cross paths with the right book, the right person, just like you. I mean, your example is perfect. You didn't plan that. You didn't go, I want to go into functional medicine. I want to meet Judy on Tuesday. Like you just went, I'm interested. I want to trust myself. I'd like something new. And because you didn't put some goal on it and you didn't, insist that it become something specific, it happened naturally. It happened quickly. It's an excellent example of how you don't know how it's going to work out, but you have to trust that tomorrow the sun will rise. Yeah. It will.
Yeah. That's a very interesting. I'll just elaborate a little bit more, because it's very interesting how I had been searching for a career change because of my injury, I couldn't do my full scope of OBGYN. So I bought a book. That's what you do when you're a doc. You buy books that tell you how to do, like, back then it's like, what do you do as a doctor? It's like, okay, you work for a pharmaceutical company, you work as a medical malpractice person, in court as professional, whatever. Nothing lit me up. I read the book and I was like, oh, this is it. This is all I can do with my life, or I stay doing what I'm doing and just stay, not operating, not delivering anymore. And I was having my own personal health struggles. I wanted something fun to do in my life. So I joined a direct selling company to sell skincare, anti-aging skincare. I'm like, how fun is this? Something new, something exciting, something different. Well, my former neighbor where I grew up, I don't even really talk to her, but she reached out and she said, hey, I have this really cool anti-aging doctor where I live. Why don't you reach out to her to see if you can sell her some skincare? That's the doctor. So I literally got on the phone trying to sell her something. And she said, oh, I got my own skincare, but like, tell me what's going on medically with you. And I'm like, oh, well, this is what's going on. They tell me it's this, but I'm not feeling better. Oh no, you have this. And can I offer you a job? And I'm like, because literally I felt like I had no purpose in life. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I'm like, I'm not changing lives anymore. Like I need to find my purpose. And I have to say, it didn't happen overnight. I was on this search for my own health and for purpose for a while. But like all those synchronicities, like you said, like the skincare, like if I had not done that, I wouldn't have probably been referred to this. I wasn't out there looking online for somebody to help me because I didn't even know this existed. So like you said, like I was just open to all those little, and it's interesting along the way, before that token night, I think I kept listening to yes, this is it. I want to do this. It lights me up. The skincare lights me up, like it gives me some sort of feeling like I have purpose. Like one of my strengths is love of learning. Like I love to learn new things. So like for me, that was fun. And it just led me to that conversation one night, a 30-minute conversation that completely changed my life and gave me my purpose back. And I'm so eternally grateful. But like, if I had said no, I don't know where I'd be. I don't even want to think of where I'd be today.
So one of the other common things that happens in the mind when you listen to a story like this is you go, that's great for her, but what about me? Like she's lucky, right? So I want to demystify this. You are not lucky. I am not lucky. Listeners, your neighbors are not lucky. The person that you listen to that tells you that story and you go, oh my God, they're so lucky. It is not luck. It is not luck. Everybody has intuitive guidance. Everybody has the ability to let go of the demand that it has to be a certain way. And when you let go of the demand, you realize that free flow, like the flow state of creation and creating your life and making choices and intersecting with different opportunities is the design of life itself. Nobody is lucky. Nobody has a leg up on somebody else in this department. Everybody is equalized in terms of synchronicity, intuitive guidance, positive things happening.
Yep.
You know, and when I think of purpose, my purpose is just to be me. Like, and so how do I, the way I do that is by writing currently. The way that you do that, the way that you be your authentic self currently is the functional medicine. So somebody else, the way that they're going to quote unquote find their purpose is just be themselves.
Yeah.
And the expression of that self you'll label it with some kind of topic, you know, writer, functional medicine physician, whatever you want to label it with. But follow that. So the other thing too, when I say follow your excitement, people go, oh, I'm not pure joy all the time. It's not what I'm talking about. There is a spectrum. In my book, if you buy the book, there's a chart that gives my interpretation of words that describe X number of emotions, like as many emotions as I could fit in this chart. And the chart also shows you how those emotions are relative to the stream of well-being that's always present within you. So if you're depressed and you're despondent, your highest level of excitement might be anger, because anger is a step up from an empowerment from completely depressed and despondent. So if you go from, you know, completely laid out to I'm just really angry, you're actually moving up the scale of emotional resonance. So, you know, everything is relative. Everything depends on the individual nature of the person and where they are and how they're doing emotionally. So don't interpret that as I have to go to pure joy. In fact, you can't get to pure joy from despondency. It's too far of an emotional shift. You can't. So you got to kind of little by little baby steps, you know, make the next best choice, make the next best choice, make the next best choice. Don't go so far into the future, because if you go out into the future, what happens is you usually cross that threshold of believability and you go into doubt and fear. You know, don't go so far out. That's the downside of that, you know, thing called goal setting that people do a lot of times. Is it actually creates more fear and, you know, more constricted emotions, because you're like, how am I going to do that? I don't know. Like bring it in, come back to this place where you actually believe and resonate with these choices that you have. Don't worry so far about 30, 60, 90 days, a year from now, 2 years. Don't worry so much. You're going to get there. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. Come back to today.
Yeah. My emotions didn't go from despondent to joy. That's for sure. It was a series. And, you know, I actually, the summer prior to all this, I was thinking I'm no longer living. Like that's
Me
how,
too.
And I'm like, to think that I had 2 kids sleeping in rooms next to me. And I'm like thinking of checking out because I just don't know what I'm doing with my life. And that's major, like, you know, but, you know, I'm going to get your book and connect the dots back, because I'm sure there was from that point now, you know, going to where I am today, but even back, it's like there were a small series of different feelings along the way, but I certainly didn't go from, and I certainly was not lucky. And I certainly never thought that the next decision I made was going to lead me to where it had. I kept the faith I did that there was something better. That's what got me out of bed in the morning, you know, to think that I was stuck and I was never going to find something else to do with my life and my purpose. I wouldn't be talking to you today. So like there had to be something that still kept me in the game to believe and just keep doing things to move me forward, not really even knowing that they were that next best decision to move me in the direction that my life is today.
Yeah. And so intuition is one of those things that works in all case scenarios. It is working full force when you're depressed. It's working full force. And a lot of times people will use intuition as like an emergency, like my car flipped over and I was about to die and I heard this voice, and like they use it as a sense of like only in miraculous situations. But I'm telling you, it's working no matter where your physical perspective is focused, whether it's completely down, you know, down in the dumps or high above. Like it's 100% functional all the time. And so that's the cool part, is you can be depressed or despondent or been like ready to give up, and you still have full access to your intuitive guidance that will tell you how you can get out of that, how you can move forward, even though there is that voice that goes, give up. Who cares? Nobody cares about you. You're a loser. Like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of the difficulty with being human is we get prescriptive thinking. We think, I can't change careers. I can't, like, we get so caught up in there being one way. Well, why would you give that up? You're a successful
Mm-hmm.
doctor. Like, you've got a great career, and everybody gives you this horrible advice that makes you think you can't change directions. You guys, it might be that we have 6 or 7 major paths in a lifetime. Maybe one,
Mm-hmm.
maybe two, maybe there's 6 or 7. Like maybe every decade you
Mm-hmm.
change direction. I think I'm almost in that point right now, because with menopause, it changes so much because the
Mm-hmm.
hormones in the brain and the body change, and your thinking changes, and what's important changes. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Something's changing.
Yep.
And my inner guidance will lead me to the next chapter. So I'm literally in the space where I'm sitting here going, what's next? Please
Mm-hmm.
tell me, higher self, give me some guidance, give me a hint. I'm just going to do my day and wait for the inspiration, knowing it's there, and I'm getting clearer and I'm getting clearer. And
Mm-hmm.
I can feel the differentiation between the last chapter and this one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to set goals and
Yeah.
try to schedule my day so that I have no time to think. And I'm not going to think, well, I have to know what it is in order to accomplish it. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I've talked to people who have had no plan for tomorrow and have lived phenomenal lives. Phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. I just resonate with that so much. Yeah. I've had a change in every decade of my life as well. And it's interesting when I made the pivot from conventional medicine to woo-woo medicine, is what a lot of people think functional
Yes.
medicine is. I heard everything. Like you're giving up your training, you're giving up a 6-figure salary, you're giving up a stable job, you're giving up blah, 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 to go to this other thing.
Yep.
And yeah, I was like, no, this is it. Like this is, what I really tapped into is what makes me happy. And what I was doing was not making me happy, even though I was doing all the other things. I was not happy. And when I'm considering no longer like taking my life, I got to do something. Like that's a little bit of an emergency.
It is.
But it's funny you say, because I just turned 50 in January, and I feel this decade, another pivot's coming, but I'm not rushing it. Like I'm good where I am, but I feel something coming up. I just don't know what it is. And that's
Yeah.
cool. Like I'm good. I'm riding the wave.
Yeah. Yeah. We really don't put value in the journey. Everyone is so rushed to get somewhere, as if when
Yeah.
you get there, that's somehow going to make you happy. I'll be happy when.
Mm.
Like, well, you can live your life that way, but I
Mhm.
guarantee you, when you're about to transition back out, you're going to go, shoot, I missed the boat. I should have been happy with what was.
Mhm.
So that the next thing I was like, and I know that's people like, oh, well, bad stuff happens. Yeah, well, I understand that. I mean, I live in Highland Park, Illinois. If anyone's got any amount of memory, July 4th,
Mm. Mhm.
bad,
Mhm.
really bad stuff
Really
happens.
bad. Yeah.
Really bad stuff happens. But you got to make a choice.
Yeah.
Positive, negative, neutral is available and I mean every situation.
Mhm.
You know, I wasn't at the parade, but this is my community. And I know
Mhm.
people who were. And we just had another lockdown at the school because some joker brought a gun to school. And instantly, we're all texting each other, I love you, honey. I love you.
Mhm.
We didn't know what was going on. So, you guys, you can, even after that adrenaline rush, even after that horrible situation, you're given a choice.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah, for anyone that thinks I was lucky, I broke my back in 2012, and I fell off of my horse.
Oh,
So I always think like I shouldn't have gone for the lesson that day. I shouldn't have got on the horse. I knew it was raining, all those should haves, right? But like, and I was about a year and a half of like, I call it the grieving process, and went through all of those emotions, including what at that time I thought was lost my career. And it was just a transition in my career. That's all. But
mhm.
and to this day, 11 years later, I'm still dealing with things, but like, yeah, I'm grateful. Because of that, I'm so grateful for, even to this day, like I can walk and I can exercise and I can, I'm with my kids still. I'm not paralyzed. I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm living, like, so there's so many good things outside of the not so good thing that personally happened. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I hear that, and outside of that adrenaline rush, just remember moving forward, just to be happy where you're at, because you're going to look back and be like, oh, I should, like you said, I should have been happy then, because look at
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah. Just find a way to find every situation can be viewed from the positive, negative, or neutral.
Love
And
that.
there's an initial, of course, there's an initial jolt, right? The cortisol, the adrenaline,
Yeah.
but after that wears off, and however long it takes, choose another perspective.
Yeah. Love that. So this has been great. I always, again, bookend on either side of the interviews, personal things. What about you? So, do you have a morning routine and an evening routine? Like, do you start your day, speaking of intuition and connecting to self and all the things, like, is there a way that you start your day to set you up to be more receptive to what's coming in?
So I have a massive amount of excitement with connecting with non-physical energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, once I get into bed, I begin communing with both my non-physical self and that of other essences and spirits and things. And I say, I want to know when my physical body is sleeping, what my non-physical self is doing. And this is where I learn, and this is where I teach. So I go to bed inviting in knowledge. And it sounds strange. I actually have been sleeping better since this new protocol with the physician gave me. But at night, I actually have information coming in, channeled, because I'm a channel. I'm a psychic and a channel. So I have information coming in. It doesn't bother me. It's fine with me. And usually what happens is, as I'm waking up in the morning, and the information is being translated, that's the most exciting thing I can do, is sit there and actually, because I'm a big writer, I have a blog that I write, and I have books that I write and stuff. So usually what's happening is I find clarity and awareness on how to describe a new perspective on a topic or idea. That's literally how I start my day. As I wake up into this reality, I'm bringing forth this knowledge that I've been working on and playing with at night, so that I can write about it, or talk about it, or teach about it, or live it.
Wow. That's impressive.
I love it. I just love it. I just love spending time in this realm of esoteric and metaphysical, and and you'll see in the book, when you read the book, everything from when I was 3 and I had a vision of being a light being, to when my mom died, to all these different sort of metaphysical touch points where I was learning information that I'm now utilizing and teaching.
I can't wait to read the book. So, final question. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago?
That I am pure love, and that I'm worthy.
Beautiful. Where can the audience connect with you? Where do you like to hang out?
Go to my website, AllisonSutter.com, and that can branch off. Encourage you to sign up for my blog if you like what I write, if you like my perspective. I'm constantly bringing in what I perceive as never before seen or never before perspectives about different esoteric topics. In fact, I just wrote a blog on Anthony William. He's big. He's called the medical medium. He's big in that. I just wrote a blog on a couple of different perspectives, and I've followed his stuff for years, but it's interesting just to look at it from what is a different perspective. So you can get a free 5 keys to mastering intuition cheat sheet, get you started.
I saw that on your website.
Follow me on Instagram. I'm kind of taking a break from a little bit of social media I want to do a bunch of different things, but follow me there. There's a ton of videos you can watch, backlog of stuff.
Love that. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for being on. I mean, it definitely gave us a different perspective, and I really like going deep on intuition and just sort of making it language that the audience listeners can understand, which I think is, we all tune out when we don't understand something. We're like, oh, that's not for me, or I don't understand it. It's too hard. And I think you really brought it down to a level where everybody can understand. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
And with that, I'm out of here. Talk to you again soon.